Entonces, ahora con el programa.
And now we will carry on with the open program. As we previously said, in this closing session, this year's theme is dedicated to air and its invisible nature. The definition of air ranges from a set of chemical elements, a concept, an inspiration, a source of life and death, and its elemental role as a factor for change for humans, animals, and landscapes. Today, we present two contributions that explore air as an element related to living conditions and thus an indicator of the quality of life. We have just seen Taller, a 2022 video dance by Luciana Croato and the group of artistas inflamables that develops the idea that a plant is alive as long as its roots are alive. And it's not unusual for felled trees to sprout new shoots and come back to life. Luciana Croato was born in Santa Fe in Argentina. She graduated in 2019 from the Masters of Performing Arts and Visual Culture at the Reina Sofia Museum and the University of Castilla-La Mancha, trained at the Instituto Superior of Dance in Colón Theatre in Buenos Aires, as well as the Superior Institute of Dance in Bordeaux and the Rue de School in Lausanne. The work is a part of the cycle Materia Forest 5, which celebrates the poetic power of trees. The second proposal is a lecture on architecture by Héctor Barroso, founder of the workshop Héctor Barroso THB. This conference has the support of Cercle Gespromat, a company that provides project construction and facility management services for the construction and rehabilitation of properties in Barcelona and in Costa Brava. Under the title Elemental Air, we can see how air is a vital mixture of gases that causes oxidation or corrosion. The lecture recovers the physicochemical nature of air to preserve the role that plays in the workshop of Héctor Barroso. Héctor Barroso workshop was founded by Héctor Barroso in 2011 in Mexico City. The work of this workshop is looking to generate architectural proposals that are rooted in their environment, taking advantage of the natural resources of each place, the impact of light and shadows, the surrounding vegetation, the different geographical events and materials, as well as construction methods of the place. Thus, the architecture emerges in harmony with the site, generating spaces with emotional features that will make us to recall the exercise of architecture. Héctor Barroso holds a degree in architecture from the Universidad de Anahuac, Mexico North in 2006. His work has been awarded with different awards, such as in the Biennial of Architecture in Mexico for the project Los Cabos, and also the awards received for Entre Pinos, five houses in the Bravo Valley in Mexico, such as the International Space Design Awards in Shenzhen in China 2019, and the gold medal of the third Biennial of Young Architects of Mexico, and the silver medal of Mexico City Biennial, both in 2017. His work between 2015 and 2022, it is gathered in the magazine El Croquis, number 213, published in 2022. He combines his professional activity with workshops, conferences, and exhibitions. The most recent are the conference and exhibition Procesos at the Roger Williams University and the conference Cátedra Blanca at the School of Architecture of Madrid in 2022, and the conference Disrupting Housing New Paradigms in Mexican Collective Living at Rice University during the Congress of 2020. Having said this, let's start with this closing lecture of this open program and the workshop program as well. Thank you. Hello, can you hear me? All right. First and foremost, let me just thank Carmen, Rafael, Ramon, Andrea, and all the people that invited me to be in such a Friday evening, 7 p.m. in Olot, having fun and being so happy to be with you for a few days together. Congratulations to the students and teachers for all the works that you exhibited. I think that it really echoes with some of the things that I want to share with you today, and I do hope that you will enjoy it. And finally, if you allow me, I'm going to read part of the lecture because I don't want to lose this idea, and I don't want to be overwhelmed and get lost in my own words. Therefore, I accepted the invitation as an opportunity to be with you and to think about my work and to think about my life. There were some months to reflect on myself. I had the chance to work with some of my collaborators, and together with a friend, I was able to create this lecture. Therefore, I'm going to feel very comfortable to read some parts and paragraphs of my main ideas related with my work. So, the air in architecture, it is an aspect that it's very difficult to see as a phenomenon that can be perceived. We can express with diagrams of ventilations and flows, but it's very difficult to explore the geomorphic strength in architecture. I believe that air, it is better seen in the fringes, in the limits, in the areas that fills up. Therefore, I'd like to invite you to observe in depth this image that gathers the immensity of air in its most elemental fashion as something that is able to sculpture the space. If we look very closely, this Aeolian construction, we will find a lot about architecture. I do invite you to make this a mental experience. This is a tree of a stone. It is the final result of the erosion, abrasion of a sun that has been transported by the air, the erosion of the stone more in the base rather in the branches. And this is something that we can appreciate thanks to the strength and the strikes of wind and also the pressure of temperature changes. We know that warm air is less dense than cold air, and it goes up due to the hotter molecules. They have more energy, therefore they are much more active than the cooler ones. So you can see in this rock how the hot air goes up and the cool air goes down. The molecules of air, they comprise and they create more strength in the base. The eroded rock as a column of smoke, these perpendicular that constantly work together in architecture. A compression strength, another strength of distribution and translation that can be translated from a Teutonic perspective in two elements, the pillar and the beams. The most simple structure that we can build with these two elements, it is this vein, the empty space available to put something opened in between. The rock architecture that we can see in the middle of nowhere is a vein, and we can look from very closely that we can see the shadow on the floor that offers us this threshold. The geomorphic strength of air offers us these elemental doors. I do invite you to go beyond the threshold and to observe under the shadow and to appreciate the outer spaces. We discovered a shelter that offers us the possibility to breathe outside from the heat of desert. In Greek, the word domos has to do with the house, but also with the roof. of the house. This is the main basis of a domo, of a roof, but also of this home that works as a shelter, and together we will find the principles to have a home and the principles of a home. This polished rock of this rocky offers us a place to chill out, and during this chilling moment we will be able to contemplate and to relax. We will see this new window, this vein that offers us to the possibility to observe the horizon and the territory. The shadow will invade this place and we will have time to chill out. That's the time for we to appreciate how moments went by. This is like a clock in the sand. Shadow will offer us the possibility to see how the things change and also to observe the precarity of our refugee and also how we can see these columns that are under this and the roof that will make us to feel in our tomb if we will fall from another rock. We can open a new door. This is a decision on time. We can be there, seated, or to carry on our way. Therefore, if we want to be there for good, we will understand the role of death. The same rock that offered us the possibility to relax, it's a threat. Therefore, the will to build something, it is the answer to our fragility and the fact of being finite. The architecture protects us from our own existence. Well, the destructive strength of air makes us to start working. We put together some rocks, these polished rocks. It is the base for a new column that will make this domo to be more stable. The shadow shows the way. The outer space creates a wall, protects us from the wind, when we have to spur the fire. We are looking for stability to keep inside this dome our habits of life, to inhabit this space. Thanks to the strength of the air, we were able to build a house. You and myself, we sit all around the bonfire, and this would be our home, maybe. As Lao Tzu said, the master of Tao Te Ching, he said this sentence that I leave you for you to read, and I think that it is very interesting. The air allows us to understand the void, the subtle elements that make the planet Earth something where we can live. To build it is to create a new life. It's like a pot, like a jar. With this house of air, I was able to understand the intuitive way I understand architecture, how I do feel and I think architecture myself. Architecture to me, it is work, the wood, the clay, the walls, the stone, with the hands of the air, softly, constantly, subtly, and humbly, to respect the void that allows us to contemplate the time and to embrace the territory. I'd like to share with you three main ideas, three concepts that are important to me in architecture that I try to share with the previous image. Time, domesticity, and territory. From these three main items, I'd like to make a journey from all the projects I worked with and to share with you my anxieties. Time. Air is time, because in the meteorological processes and the erosion offers a layer of architecture. We can see that there is a perfection of architecture because it offers the winds of time. Domesticity. Air is also domesticity because the house is a shelter that we can buy against the weather. It's like a membrane between the outdoor and the inside in order to domesticate the power of air, opening different heights, the weather, the rhythm, wet, light, shadows. The architectural regulation of these spaces make the space habitable and to create a new human atmosphere. Territory. The air is territorial because the broadness determines the materiality of the landscape and also the way we can create as humans identities and the idea of belonging to a place. Well, and going back to the idea of time, in order to understand time and the way I use time in my thinking and in my architectural practice, I'd like to make this journey together with you and to showcase some images to better explain these processes. The house of this picture, it looks like a block that we can see at the back, this rock at the back. In the end, this is something that we could think about. I designed and I built this with the intention to reproduce the landscape and this idea of atemporality. The landscape is a time repository. The rock at the back, it is a result of the geological forces that date from millions of years ago. If this house could be in reality a house from this rock, we won't think about the solidity of the rock, but also the fragility, the potential to get eroded and to give some space to gravity and climate. It can be produced by the crack of produced by the root of a tree, a fracture that gets bigger with the cold or heat. In the end, the tectonics of the landscape oblige us to think before building, to think about the ruins. The remains of human architecture shows a process of collapse, but also a process of resistance and stability that it's able to survive to time. Mexico, it's a country full of ruins with the previous and old pyramids that emulate mountains and some walls of different convents and monasteries that really assimilate the shape of the world. When we observe the pre-Hispanic buildings as we have here on the screen, when we observe this kind of constructions all over the country, it's something very helpful to me. It really helps me to understand materiality of the territory that I live in. It is like a bone eroded in the desert. Ruins shows us the strength of the structure. We can create a space from the ruins. It's an efficient methodology to understand what's pivotal and what's important and vital when we build something. The cornerstone, it is to think not how, but also how the structure can be able and to work together with them in favor to keep this stability possible. That's why, to me, time understood as a something that it's a succession of meteor weather effects, it would be another material that we'll be building. So in the image of the left side, we can see how wind work for the shape of this rock. On the one hand, we can see that is something very raw. We can form the mineral, and we can see on the other hand how they work, and we can also observe the oxidation of the material as well, and how everything is decolorated and how everything is more exposed. Therefore, we can understand the material identity and the architecture as well. When we build, I try not to erase the identity of materials. I avoid as much as possible and I do accept them the way they are. I work with the textures and patterns that naturally offer some erosion as well. So to design in such a way, it is also to anticipate how rain, how wind, how the sun will change almost everything. How can we appreciate the layer of time and how everything is opaque? and how the material will be something that will be reproduced and progress thanks to time. I'd like to work with materials able to get the layer of time, that are stable and do not need maintenance. I think that the architecture sustainability, it's based in this idea and to understand all these concepts. In this picture, we can see two identical buildings, one next to the other, that are able to talk. We can see the layer that, and we can see the new materials. For a Japanese, the most valuable of both materials could be the one on the right side, the one that has another layer. And for a Western citizen would be the one on the left side, something that really looks new or recently built. Maybe because in Western countries we did not understand what time can share with us about different qualities. Time is not an homogeneous thing, has in the air different atmospheric qualities. In such a way, the architectural space must be thought as an evolutive process that grows and it's adapted to time until it really gets new properties and it's able to absorb the beauty of the place. Well, when the role of the program open space, the space can be an obstacle more than a resource in itself. Once again, if we go back to what the runes are showing, we can learn a lot. We can learn a lot about architecture if we observe these structures, these ephemeral structures, such as the scaffolding, all these structures for the building, and also, let's say, these houses that were built in one of the works that we made together in just 2 days to solve a transitory problem of habitability and that tiny house that was built by someone without knowing anything about architecture, just from the basis of a common sense and intuition, we can see a clear structure and the mechanism of a ventilation and lighting, that it's very precise. And once we are inside this house, we can review the information as well. So, in the end, we are in a friendly climate, in a very good climate. On the other hand, my work with the temporality, it's something that remains very important to me when I plan something. I need to take time. I want to visit the place many times where I'll be building something. It is a great opportunity to see from my own eyes and to see from the skin, as we read and as we saw in a Thalasma case. In this place, we can see the first sketches, the first intuitions related with the project itself. Runes are the sketches for architecture. It is a robust gesture that shows the main intention of a shape. Drawings, to me, it is a way to think architecture, but certainly the most important thing, as it is a mean that will allow us to share and to communicate in a very basic element. It is a way to create a new idea. It is a way to make this possible and to circulate in a subtle manner in front of our eyes and to get simulated and transformed by the others. Drawing in such a way, it is to work as a wind does. It is to make a sketch until everything is completely polished. Another important step in this design process has to do with creating different scales. Creating some models allows me and my team to try some space. It is a test to perception. And to perceive, when we elaborate some models, we can feel the space. Well, there is no fluidity of the drawing, and we work with the rigidity and the toughness as well as the fragility or gravity of the structure as well. To build from a scale will allow us to understand the proportion of the space
ciclos de la luz y sombra en diferentes
and to see the
ángulos.
shadows and the angles and the architecture and also the behavior.
Pensar con la mano significa percibir el
To think
espacio
with the hand means to understand the space from all the proportions, to go from the optical from the optical to the optical. Viewing, it's petrifying, like the medusa, and it's blinding us of the changes. And the haptic perception allows us to open the space in movement, to understand in a more dynamic way and in a fluid way everything as a process on time. All the constructions must get the breadth of the users to conceive the useful also the role of construction, and all the stages allow us to understand that we will need some changes, at least in Mexico. This is one of the best elements that we have in Mexican architecture. So the plans that we created are not always on stone, and during the work or processes, there are loads of changes that many times we must control ourselves, and many times it's not possible. And I did understand all a long time that it was very difficult to erase and to listen, and many times to, well, accept that I can be upset, accept that I can be upset due to changes made by customers, clients, builders, and so on and so forth. Another positive thing that we have in Mexico are these exercises, those exercises that are accidents that happen by chance. Because in the end, as I said before, the plan is not made on stone, and during the process of the construction, we can get committed and we can carry on experiencing, and we can accept these accidents by chance. Accepting them in such a way, it is like thanking how we can build architecture and how to create the processes that take some time in my country, at least. And these two exercises that I wanted to share with you, these two stairs, the results were not planned on paper. They were just simple visits to the works, and something that we could see on the left side. Well, we left on the outer spaces, so in the concrete, just a slate of wood that helped us to create a new structure. Thanks to this good slate, and the stair, well, goes from the first floor to the terrace. Therefore, we were able to convey this idea, this lack of light towards the lower levels. Once we get rid of this stopping, and we can observe all these steps that during the day, well, they tend to be different depending on the daylight. And on the right side, what we did was to take some copper tubes for the main tube water pipe that was used during the works and the construction work, and we put it in the concrete walls that supported the beams. When we put the metallic beams, there was an empty space on the one side and the other, and the copper allowed to reflect the lights, and the result was that the exact example of the dark chamber, and the images on the right side reflected on the wall are the images of the sky. I think that you cannot see. You can see the sky, the dome of the church, and the jacaranda trees, and the trees of chameleon inverted. So, well, and now we talked about the idea of domesticity. This city is my house. We called Anáhuac. Anáhuac means close to the water. It was the name that we offered to the most elevated part of the Lake Central area, where we have the Tenochtitlan as the capital. From those lakes, the only thing that we have today in the city is just an empty name and a concrete ocean. An ocean of concrete where everything it is dry and a very, very unstable soil. But it's really true that it is very complex and it's very complicated. Mexico as a city, it's a human and a very powerful space. Despite all the problems, it really shows a lot of admiration. Architecturally speaking, it's very eclectic and also ecumenic, full of contradictions, layers, and fractures. And I'm using these three images to convey you this idea and how we build literally this city. The images on the left side where we had a pre-Hispanic city, we built a colonial city, and finally a modern architecture. And this is something that we can appreciate on the right side. It is the square of the three cultures, something that the same name says, and the most important of this square, as you can see, it is the coexistence of the colonial architecture, mainly. What really strikes me more than these elements that are opposed is the empty space of this big square, an identity that it's not built due to the formal homogeneity, but also in the surroundings and the freedom of a being. Living and working in architecture here offered me loads of freedom, mainly showed me how to treat the city as another landscape, something that is very hostile, but also very generous. These are some of the examples that I was able to compile in all the things that I did. Some causes me a lot of anxiety. There are very few pictures that I want to share with you if I take into account the amount of pictures that I have in my cell phone. From an architectural perspective, I wanted to understand this ability to domesticate. How can we build? How can we respect? How can we make livable this daily density? How can we take advantage of this power that the city, and how can we protect from the erosion? In conclusion, how can we build our home inside this city? Well, when I began to make these kind of exercises, these urban exercises in the city center, and the left side drawing, it is a typical department and apartments. You have the first floor, second, and the third floor, and each and every one of the floors, well, you have some houses and homes, and that's the idea. Well, some benefits, the one it's on the first floor, and some benefits, the one it's on the last floor and the upper floor. And as for the drawing on the right side, shows this intention of domesticity. How can we create this atmosphere of house, living in a third or fourth floor? The trend of densification makes the house to keep on growing vertically. I wanted to share with you this idea of a home, habitability, domesticity, with total independence of how the building is protected. I understand domesticity and home more than an architecture object. It's something that goes beyond of the housing spaces that can be translated in different typologies of space. I want to share with you in these projects what to me is domesticity in the end. And, well, these are two examples of two different projects in very close areas, one from the other, with sharing the same interests and anxieties. That's what I like to show them at the same time, around domesticity as well. And this new architecture, well, it's not a new architecture. At least what I'm trying to do with this architecture, it is to offer some space for trees, nature, the very few natural spaces that we have, not only due to the bounty and the good things that we can observe here in the picture, and trees offer these new shadows to the city, and really doesn't allow this current of air, but also it really makes it more safer. And if this is something that we forgot in Mexico City, and those outer spaces, the very few nature that is very peaceful in nature between the spaces with different flows, and also, well, makes them to be closer towards a human scale as well. Something that we must remind before we start talking about Mexico, we need to offer some space to nature, nature that invades between concrete and sidewalks. Without this perspective towards natural things, the air in the city will be always very rare. Sorry. On the left side, we do have 6 houses, 6 apartments that they really show this anxiety towards nature and to emphasize the role that nature plays. So this is kind of a gesture of the image that we have on the left side. And it was more friendly, the relationship with the outer space, and in some cases more intimate, where it was necessary, and I'd like to tell you each and every one of them. And when I say that despite being different projects, that these projects, they come from the same anxieties and ideas, I'm talking about it. I'm talking about these first sketches and drawings. What really interests me, it is the empty space, this yellow color that we can see there. This empty space where the building, what we do, firstly, it is to modulate the building, to divide the building, to offer the importance that really deserves the architecture that we'll put later together with this. It's going to be better because we are looking for the cross ventilations in all the different spaces as well. So we are making us able to create. We look also for new floors for the air to come from one side to get up from the other side. We centralize the circulation and the services for the floor to be as much flexible as possible. And mainly, we do emphasize a lot this relationship with the outer space through this continuity of these spaces toward these courtyards and roofs. And after that, we go from the drawings to the different sections where the exercise, in the end, in one of them, it is something achievable. How to make possible that in these 6 living spaces, all these spaces will have a straightforward relationship with a terrace, with a patio, with the outer space, instead of putting one apartment, the second apartment floor, the third floor apartment, not them having outer spaces. We played with them, and you can see the interaction amongst them with the different colors, how they are related with these empty spaces, and how we are able to create this blue. The apartment lifts towards this patio, and how this orange or reddish apartment, it is connected towards this other patio in the back. So it's kind of a duplex apartment that looks towards these other patio. And we did the same exercise in the upper levels. Instead of broadening, if a patio is growing towards the terrace, and we use these spaces as well, therefore the green apartment goes up and it has this extension in the terrace and in the roof, and the purple apartment has also, and this duplex goes up. And in the other exercise that we did, we have different levels, the same anxieties and interests, how to translate and how to offer this domesticity to these spaces in the second or third level, and all these extensions towards the balconies, the terraces, through different sliding windows, the flow of the air, the natural light, taking advantage of almost everything, understanding these exercises once again, and talking about spaces, patios, and the exercises that we do with models, and how we understand spaces, and how a department it is together with another one, and how we can create new buildings, and we build this architecture in a simple way, also creating new circulations. When it's up, the other one it's down, and vice versa. And this is what is really important to me, and this is what is really interesting to me, to see the final result. And this is was something that we were looking for with all these exercises, thinking about this negative space, these spaces where the departments can live, and not only being light courts, and we can introduce nature and to include inside in a natural manner. And these are additional square meters that people can enjoy more than the inner spaces. So that's why we can see these first ideas to achieve this. Unfortunately enough, in Mexico City, it's quite good. We have a great climate and weather, therefore almost the whole year, and we can enjoy the nature and the outdoor spaces and green spaces. And if we go back again to talk about the relationship, the inner spaces, the outer spaces, the first levels where the inner space it's totally open, and we incorporate it in the outer spaces. The domestic thing has a lot to do with the relationships that we can set, especially with these conditions, the inner space, the outer space, with the barriers, as well as the limits that we have between nature and the building and the construction. So in the end, these are two different buildings with the same views and the same ideas and perspectives behind. And as for the higher levels, the upper levels, we can see the same perspective, opening the spaces towards the balconies, the terraces, the roof, the connection with nature, with jacarandas that you can see on the picture of the right side, the left side, sorry. We can see different journeys inside the apartments, as well as the lights, the ventilation in both sides of the volumes. Therefore, once again, open spaces, flexible spaces, where the user can compose everything in a different way, different intentions. Intention is still the same. It is the same possibility to have an open space, flexible space, with this relationship with the outer space, these limits that are very vague, and not defined and strict the social spaces. We can enjoy these spaces, we can have fun in outdoors, and we do have the opposite that happens with the rooms. And what we did, we raised the structure, the beams, and we had more intimate spaces towards the outer space. We respected the intimacy, and in such a way, the project really domesticates the aspects of the street, the space relationship that you can see on the right side picture. We adopt the trees, we leave everything as something inside the building. Nature is able to get incorporated in the space experience of the house. The building is able to preserve the privacy as well. And in some other cases, we create opaque spaces. We play with texture of glass, always with the intention to ventilate and to shed some light inside the space and to create this intimacy. And in the case of the left, the picture, where the block in front, despite having these openings and ventilations, everything is biased for not to offer an open view of a neighbor against the other. And what really happens is something very, very valuable. What happens is that the drawings and the comprehension of space and void, it is what we do need in the end. In the end, we can get the result. None of these facades were designed or drawn. These are in the end the final result of these intentions to create this domesticity, this interior domesticity, where it was necessary not to have walls and to have glass sliding doors, and to do it this way. And in the other case, in the social spaces, just with an iron veranda and a terrace, we were able to enlarge the space towards the outdoor area, as you can see in the previous picture. And the spaces of rooms that go upper, we raise the wall and we create more intimacy. And the other spaces are the opposite. Therefore, in the end, we created this facade. And, well, I cannot conclude these ideas if I was not constant on my work. Light, the importance of light, and what light can offer to space, and creating these atmospheres. I can share with you some of the pictures, but what I really want it is to mention the intention and the material, the non-physical material, such as light, and how this really helps, this really broadens these limits between the inner space, the outer space, and how this provokes these feelings and these different atmospheres. And finally, I'd like to talk about the territory. And the territory, it's more than an extension. It's more than an extension of land. It's more than a vegetal space. It's a heritage that speaks about different ways to inhabit the planet. In a vernacular architecture, we have a treasure of different tactics and strategies. Know-how when we work with techniques and materials that talk about adaptability that makes life possible in different territories. Each and every one territory has a different level of implication, a different way of being that must be respected and building in such a way. Now I'd like to talk about two different territories, the forest and the desert. And I'd like to conclude about the air ideas, not only as a geomorphical element, but also as an element of the cultural landscape that must be coherent with the place and the environment. The project I'm going to talk about are 5 houses in Valle de Bravo, a forest area. Inside this village, where we can observe these pictures, and we can see this vernacular architecture that is very, very interesting, with these houses with very low roofs and very reduced outer walls, where all the activity is towards the inside and inside the patios, the courtyards that we have inside the houses. To me, this place really speaks to me about what we have to do. It was clear to me to understand the intention of people that work there for many, many years, where common sense really is vital. It's something that we can perceive. It really resonates with me, and how to face the product. And all these details in the end are very important. The walls, the thick stairs, and this interaction. And these are the place. This is the place where there was an infinity of pine trees, wonderful and lushy nature. And we have to respect the trees and everything as much as possible. And to protect everything that was there. The main intention, as we can see on the left drawing, was to distribute the houses on the field in such a way that this, in some way, will offer the feeling that there was not a clear limit between different units, always trying not to accept the typical format of a houses, whether house number 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on and so forth. We wanted the opposite. We wanted to differentiate the limitations and nature to be the one that will limit one garden from the other, and to create these private spaces where it was necessary to do it. So we started to work with this idea in mind, where the architecture of this place told us to be this way and to do it this way. The access towards the street that was shared by neighbors, and beyond that it was a northern side. So by the Bravo, it's a very wet area with a lushy vegetation, with lots of pine trees. We had to get close towards the north part, open to the south, in order to incorporate the biggest amount of natural light and heat inside the houses. Towards the north, this idea of being thicker, very few walls, not to be very opened, these walls that talk about intimacy and about this relationship with this street that we shared. And towards the south, the opposite side, well, there was a great relationship, broader relationship with the garden, with each and every one of the houses and windows that were opened, without these limits between the inner space and the outer space. And the exercise in each and every one of the houses was the intention of creating this intimacy through a patio, the main patio that we can see here. And in these surroundings, well, we had the 6 different volumes where towards the north they were less exposed, and towards the south they start to get opened and to have a dialogue with the garden without any kind of hierarchy. Therefore, there were no, so to speak, main circulation or a main vertical trajectory. We wanted to feel this tension in all these spaces where we could see this connection with the upper level, and the house can be lived and we can circulate without any kind of a hierarchy in all the spaces, without any kind of boundaries amongst them. This was after a month of finishing the project. The picture on the left side, it's almost impossible to take today. This vegetation, it's 5-3 meters high. It raises onto here, so it's very lushy. And no, I'm lying. The only material, or let's say the material that we used mostly to cover and to protect the walls under the material, it is the land, the mud that we mixed together with the cement and offered the tone that we wanted to get to cover the walls and to leave the silhouette of the wall to be exposed and to be understood as the main structure behind. And as well the light and the beauty that light really offers all along the day, and all the sketches, the different intentions and the pictures that we took and that really speak by themselves. And now we're going to a different, completely different place. This is in Los Cabos, in the south of Baja California Peninsula, in Mexico. And this is a tennis club. It is a sports center in the coastline in Baja California, together with the Sea of Cortez, next to the Sea of Cortez. It is very popular because it shows these amazing landscapes and natural life, lots of whales and sea animals. It's an amazing desert, a great vegetation, and we are able to build this. So it's a great desert, and this is the architectural context that we have, that it's overwhelming. Loads of hotels, luxury hotels, tourism, a lack of sensitivity towards the nature that's very unique, because literally speaking, that's where we can see how the sea meets the desert, and it's kind of a Vegas or Disneyland in Mexico. But it has not only invaded by the beach, but also completely distorted the cultural landscape of the area. So this is the context that I had to face, completely different, such as in Valle de Bravo, where and we had to dialogue with him. And on the other one, I didn't find a place to, nothing told me anything, so it was not compelling to me. And it really speaks to me, something that we found on the place, a place that was amazing, with a great vegetation, very interesting, with some clay stones and a great blues. The beauty of the place was stunning. So this was the surface, and this is the land that you can see in the image. And we were behind one of these big hotels that we shared in the first image. These monster hotels that covered all the views of the beach. And behind the hotels there is a road that brings you from San Jose del Cabo to the city of Los Cabos. So we have this big road, and we were behind. Therefore, the right drawing, it is the first drawing that I did sit in my car, coming back from my first visit to the place. I did it like in a napkin, trying to assimilate what I saw before, what I felt before, and, well, it goes with this monster, this very stunning, something that is shouting and screaming out. The road here, and after that, well, some vegetation, and some silence, something that we really wanted to create, the main intention of the project, and to do the less as possible, and to create a silent architecture where we will see new journeys inside, and the visitor will live more than ever the natural beauty and the vegetation of the territory, more than the architecture as well. And calmly enough come to my mind, this place is the archaeological sites. This is Teotihuacan, that really deploys itself inside this plateau in the middle of the country. But I really like from this archaeological site, more than the pyramids and the constructions in itself, to me what I really like are these negative spaces, the empty spaces that allow us to be immersed in this space experience more than in a voyeur attitude. So I really liked, and it's really intriguing to me, these empty spaces in the middle of these negative, in the middle of this construction. So we created these first ideas, talking about this big oasis, the so-called big oasis, where we saw some previous conditions that we had to respect, but where the orientation, the north and south orientation, and that had to get these tennis courts, and also the east and west axis that we created ourselves. And at the crossroads of these two axes, north-south, east-west, we had to get the architecture of the soil and to raise the architecture from the soil. And, well, I'm not going to talk about it too much. The only gesture, the only vertical gesture was at the entrance of the complex. It was like a toilet that embraces the attention of the visitor. And, well, we can get it in, and for the rest, this is the silent architecture, walls, empty walls. It seemed that nothing was there. And once again, we wanted to play with these walls, these spaces, the platforms, always getting support with the orography of the place that had this inclination, and we designed the platforms, walls, stairs, with these upwards and downwards trajectories towards the axis of the buildings, and this clear idea where in this specific case what we really wanted was to block completely the southern part and to get open towards the north. In this desert place, what we really wanted was to completely stop the sun incidents, and what would be the best way to do it with sand, walls, sand from this place, getting open towards the north, towards the landscape, and we can see these two gestures. On the left side, the heavy wall, sober, blind, silent, towards the north, the facade that it's opened and extended towards the landscape. And here there were some conditions that made this project to be something complex. Once we began with this, the pandemic didn't come, the project had to be made the first stage, the first 6 months. We had to get a material that will be quick enough, will allow to absorb some of our mistakes, and then to material that in the end, as we said in the beginning, to get older in a great way, with dignity, looking for temporality, and for sure to create some spaces, open and flexible spaces, because it was not clear enough. They didn't have an idea about what would happen with the inner spaces during the 365 days, and the competition last for 2 weeks, and for the rest of the year we could have different activities related with sports, as well as concerts and many other activities, and open spaces, flexible spaces that will create new patios and terraces, and this anxiety and opening towards nature and walls, outer walls, to work like a curtain, these outer spaces that will all get open, and to have a dialogue with landscape. And well, in some cases, the intention was to broadening the views towards the patios, these negative spaces where we really like to work with and to dialogue with them and to share our views. These are spaces that, well, really don't have glasses and are not closed, are not in the case of yes, the building for players had to be closed, of the bathrooms as well, due to different reasons, but it's a livable space and we can enjoy the space anytime, any moment of the day. And we really wanted to have, once again, the possibility to create new activities. We wanted the building not to say something, not something specific, just to incorporate inside the landscape. The architecture had to repeat the landscape, and we did the minimum for landscape to speak, and we tried to say more with the empty and the silence,
bien acotado y
and
estructurado.
also getting a new structure to be more functional. And in one of the courts, we did this excavation, this kind of crater, this kind of volcano. And now that we are here in Olot and surrounded by so many volcanoes, and well, once again, with this, I conclude this project. The intention of the empty spaces, the negative spaces, that really conveys more ideas, that really reminds me that architecture is also the emptiness. And I do have something else to discover from this first image. That's why we are coming back from this first image. Behind this rocky building, there is a mountain. At the horizon, we can see the sky. The air expands all over the territory. And this dome of gases really creates the atmosphere. This layer that involves the land that protects us from the sun radiation. The air is transparent, without smell, without a color, that really allows the existence of life and to allow to breathe, pollinize, and also to make the photosynthesis, spreads light and sound, create wind currents that condensate the clouds and hurricanes. Winds that determine the deserts, forests, the air that surrounds us. It is the dome of our house. It's the dome of our house and the roof of our house. It reflects the sunlights and the sky is blue. We are the blue planet. To build it is to preserve as much as possible, to preserve the blue skies. Thank you.
Ahora si queréis.
And now, well, if you have a question, so you have the chance. No one dares to make a question? Thank you for this amazing conference. I do have a question. It's a very specific question, but I'd like to know the answer. Those drawings that you are sharing, they are very small. They are the format that you use. These drawings, you do it at the beginning. It is something that we saw all along the workshop with the water prints. What is the techniques that you use? It would be great to see if you have your utensils. This is smaller because I couldn't, so I bought a smaller. Usually they are bigger, like double, and well, just a single drawing or several. Do you have something? I just have some of them. This is almost new. Nothing. Thank you. I think that you are a little bit tired.
Tengo una pregunta.
Well, I do have a question. Thank you very much. You talked about the idea that you project always thinking. You observe the ruins and these make you think about the essential. What is essential for your project, right? I'd like to ask you, in your work, have you ever thought about in 50 years or in a century, or also your works will be ruins in the future, right? I'd like to ask you, Do you have the envision? Maybe due to budget you can build everything with stone. Do you have this ambition? You want your work to last for eternity? Not for eternity, because it will be very pretentious. The architecture is something permanent at the end of the day. But yes, always when I imagine that I'm drawing, that I'm designing, I think about the ruins. In the end, this ruin will come. So, how to dignify the ruins and 40 years, how this ruin will be, we don't know. It's going to be natural, as much natural as possible. So do you imagine that maybe in 50 years or 60 years, this ruin, if you're not here anymore, it could be used? Yes. Yes, it relies on the level of sustainability that we are looking for today in our studio, not only through all these technologies that we must take into account as well, but also life, the useful life of the building. The longer the useful life of this building, the bigger can change the program. So we do apologize, but we cannot provide more translations. Sorry. Thank you so much.
Continuar con distintos usos de esa edificación, ¿no?
Vale,
Me
muchas
interesa también esa
Vale.
prolongación de las cosas.
Aprovecho otra que es más. Las maquetas de hormigón, ¿a qué escala las sueles hacer?
Pues varía. Ya no tengo una referencia aquí, pero pues hemos hecho desde, no sé, una cosa como así, y un poco más grande, hasta pequeñas, como de llavero casi, ¿no? Así. Depende la inquietud que tengamos, ¿no? Si queremos entender el espacio interior, pues tenemos que hacer algo un poco más grande. Y si es otra cosa, pues puede ser una maqueta más chica.
Hola. Cuando piensas en la ruina, ¿la ves? ¿La sientes? ¿Te obsesiona? Si tuvieras un plugin de inteligencia artificial que te permitiera poner 50 años de erosión, un plugin que se llama erosión, y pudieras elegir el porcentaje de elementos, ¿quisieras verlo? ¿Quisieras verlo
¿Sí?
Solo la imagen final? ¿Quisieras verlo en timelapse?
Sí, yo creo que 50 años es muy poco. Tal vez más, ¿no? ¿Qué pasará en 100 años con esto? Por eso trato de pensar, siempre que estoy proyectando, en ese material que pueda envejecer de la manera correcta, ¿no? Que abrace el tiempo, la lluvia, la erosión, que lo invite, ¿no? Que invite a todas estas condiciones a formar parte de y se vuelvan parte de esa ruina, ¿no? O ayuden a que llegue más rápido esa ruina. Y me gusta mucho. Para mí, desde la obra ya está la arquitectura, ¿no? Entonces, como en ese momento en el que no está terminado, o no está habitado, o no está en uso el edificio, pero es simplemente obra y tal vez no tenga techos o lo que sea, ya es esa ruina. ¿Qué material puede darle esa bondad, llamémosle así, ¿no? Por eso me interesan tanto los materiales y las texturas y todo esto alrededor de ello, ¿no?
¿Qué tal, Héctor? Bueno, yo soy de México.